In this video, we're going to see how we can start painting some vegetation to our scene, as well as some mesh prefab such as rocks to our scene. So let's just jump straight to trees. So with your terrain selected, come over. We are normally in our brush settings. If we hover over, we can see paint trees. But our problem is we have no trees defined. Well, I have some trees included in your terrain assets that you've imported. So now we just need to add them as a brush or a paint layer as we've seen them. So we'll go to Edit Trees. We'll add a tree. And then we have this tree prefab button or window right here that we need to add to. So we're just going to navigate to our terrain assets down here in the project window, vegetation, shanty down trees, and we have 4 good trees to use as examples. We'll just grab the tree, add, and now when we go back to our terrain, we see a new thumbnail of a tree. And let's just go over some of the brush settings that we have right here. Brush size is as usual. Tree density means how many trees get placed down within that brush stroke. So if you want a thick forest, you can crank that. This is a range in which we can give variations to the height of our trees, and a color variation to give slight colors. So the way that this works, let me get a smaller brush size, is you click, and since my tree density is pretty low, let's see, let's crank up our density. Let's crank up our height. There we go. A little too big on the height. There we go. That's the size trees we want. Let's crank down our density. So it's a lot about finding just the right amount of density. There we go. You can see we can start adding trees to our path here. Let's add another type of tree. So you can see the shift button will delete a tree. Shift and left click. And if you don't like where things are getting randomly placed, just take your brush. If you turn density all the way up and use a small brush with 1 and 100 set over here, you can start placing down trees exactly where you click. And they'll give different variations. So you can have a pretty accurate representation on where you want to place trees. Alright, so that's how we can place trees down. I do want you to see how you can make your own trees. I've included a link to documentation, which takes you to this Unity page. If you'd like to see how to build your own first tree, it goes through the whole tree editing thing. All you need are some bark textures and some limb textures with transparency for the leaves. And you can build your own trees. So you can check that out if you want to build your own trees for something that's very specific that you want to see. Next, we're going to see how we can add some grass down to our level. And that's going to be in a different painting tab. And we're going to just focus on creating some grass in this initial area. I'm going to pause this and get rid of those. Well, if we go to layers and uncheck my gray box, press W for the move key, I can select my prefabs now, and I can disable my gray box prefab trees like so. And my first person controller is up there. I pressed F on the keyboard to snap to where my controller was. Now I'm just trying to position my first person controller up at the level. We'll press play. I just want to get a feel for how everything's looking. Nice. So now to add grass to our paints tools over here on our terrain. Let's go to terrain. And this time I'm going to click paint details. We have plenty of brushes, alphas, the familiar sculpting tools. But to actually add grass, we'll go to edit details, add grass texture. And then I'm not exactly sure where grass is at in my scene, so I'm just going to go in and type in grass right here. Hit enter. And all the grass should come up down here that we have. So I'm going to go to medium, and you can see we have these grass clusters. So I'm just going to... No, I think these are actually models. Let's find a 2D texture. So if we click the little bullseye there, what we're looking for is a grass texture with... Let's type in grass. So this is one type of grass, grass 2 dried. What we're looking for are grass with kind of a transparent background. I can show us how we can use those other grasses in a second. So we're just going to click on one of those grass textures. And here you can set its width and height. So this is how we can control how big these grasses will be when they get painted down. And here you can change its color variations. And you can get back into this menu, but we'll just add this for now. And here we have a grass thumbnail over here in details called grass 2. As you can see, it uses a billboard 2D effect. Let's increase my target strength, and let's just put some patches of grass at the base of our tree, like so. Now, if you wanted to add the other type of grass, we can do that too, the one that came in patches. We'll just go to add details, and yeah, we'll just go to add details, sorry. And we'll go to add detail mesh, since these grasses are already attached to a billboarded planes, transparent planes. So the grass texture just took a 2D texture file with transparency. The grass that we'll see in a second is already a model. So we'll go to detail mesh. We get this little pop-up. We'll go to medium, grass cluster 2. Render mode will still be grass. And we'll click add. And then we have this grass cluster. But you'll see that it's not billboarded. It's actually like a 3D mesh, as opposed to these billboarded 2D textures. So these are two variations in which we can get grass. See how they always look at us? While this grass is fully 3D. So whichever one you choose to go with is fine by me. And you can have bunches of grasses. You can even change its values, like what colors it can go between. As you can see, if you do those two, you can even change the color of the grass. So you don't want to have too much grass in your scene. It can clog up the engine. All right, let's see how we can add some actual 3D objects as paintable brush strokes. All right, so we're going to add one more type of object to our details. So we're going to go to Edit Details, add a detail mesh, kind of like our grass cluster. Remember, 2D sprite versus a modeled out clump of grass already attached to some planes with transparency. But we'll go to Edit Mesh this time. And we get the same window over here. Let's zoom in. But this time, let's see, terrain assets, vegetation, terrain assets, rocks, rock mesh. We'll put the rock mesh down, but this render mode will be vertex lit. And we don't want our rocks to be green, so let's change them from just straight up white, its natural color, to a darker gray. We'll add the rock in, and now you can see, oh, these rocks are too big. So I want to go into max width, 0.2, 0.2, and the max height is 0.2. You can see we get different variations of rocks now. Let's increase this to 0.5. Oh, min and max. Okay, so we can do 0.2, 0.2, or we can do 0.2 and 1. We get a bunch of different size rocks when we brush them down. Shift and click will delete the rocks. Careful though, you can delete the grass out as well. And I think if you just, whoa, those are some big rocks. As you can see, you can just paint this down just like you would any other kind of brush setting. So you can see I can paint down a lot of rocks. But keep in mind these are meshes, so the more rocks you put down, the more strain you'll have on your final level. Alright guys, so use these new tools and these new assets. Experiment by finding assets included in the vegetation package here. We got a bunch of stuff in here. And most of the stuff found in the vegetation will be either trees that are already used making the tree system here, or if we go to the bushes, bush 03 prefab, then it'll be something kind of like the clump of grass. So there's lots of stuff to play with here. So I'm not going to take time and record extra minutes of me going around my whole level and placing down trees and grass. The next video in which I start building the actual structures in the outside, you'll see the final results of the vegetation that I have at that point. All right, have fun planting some trees.